technology products and now coming back into crypto. So let me share some of this with you. So how do we onboard people today on Web3? I think most of you have an idea, right? If you lose your seed phrase, you're done. Be careful of scams. You can lose your money if you aren't careful. Do your own research. And by the way, don't forget to say GM. How great is that? It's not really that great, right? So who can tell me that that's a great way to onboard someone anywhere? Okay. So no matter what we do, really, you guys, if that's what we're doing, we can't improve that user experience. We can do everything that we want, but we are scaring people away, right? We always find, oh, make sure that you save your seed phrase, make sure you try this, make sure that you're writing it. That's not going to help because you're still putting so much on the user to try to come and play and do something with us. Please don't airdrop me stuff. I'm not going to accept it. So then, once we get past that, this is what happens. It's an amazing, beautiful screen, which Phantom, by the way, they have phenomenal UX. But that's what you see. A big fat nothing. And a big fat 0, 0, 0. How cool is that for your first time experience when you finally got onboarded? Not sure who liked that. Okay. So, can we make this better? I think we can, right? I think we have a lot of smart, creative people here. So, let me tell you a little story. Whenever I want to try something on ETH, on Poly, on Solana, what do I need to do? Well, before I had to get random wallets. Now, thankfully, there's multi-chain wallets that are pretty decent and pretty good. But at the end of the day, right, I want to have one profile. But then I had to get multiple wallets. And as part of that, then for each wallet, I'm getting NFTs. I'm getting passes. I'm creating profiles. I'm getting credentials. That's kind of painful and not very, very fun, right? So what else could we do? We need a proper identity layer. And it's already there. We really need to use that identity layer. So identity does not mean your public key, okay? It doesn't mean KYC. And please remember this part. Everybody always thinks about identity. Oh, KYC. We have to KYC everybody. No, we don't have to KYC everybody. That's the last thing you want to do, actually. Some cases, you want to do it to enable certain use cases, but that's not what we need to do for everything. And of course, your identity is not flexing that big bag of tokens that you have, right? So, identity really is all that you are, all that you have, and all that you do. That is your identity. That represents you. So how does an identity layer help? Well, we have a lot of tools at our disposal. You may have heard of topics or concepts like self-sovereign identity, which is a way to have that portable digital identity that doesn't depend on a centralized system, right? That you own and you control. We have concepts like decentralized identifiers, right? And all these things are becoming standards finally. It took us like 5 years to get there, but we're finally there, right? So what are the IDs? You probably have heard these concepts of abstractions and account abstraction. Well, we could have a great abstraction layer based off decentralized identifiers that then can start bridging us across chains, right? Start with a DID on Solana, go over to a DID on Polygon, which those guys thankfully built a Poly DID method and just released it open source this week, so that's awesome from Polygon. We have one for Ether. So there's just dozens and dozens of DID methods that you can use no matter what chain you are on, Then we have verifiable credentials, right? That's the underlying piece that will enable multiple use cases. Can enable CK proofs, can enable passes, can enable attestations. And all of this can be completely private. And you can selectively disclose what information you are going to share with that dApp, with that smart contract. And of course, last but not least, how many of you have heard of soulbound tokens? Maybe who hasn't heard of it? That will be a better question. Okay, right? So soulbound tokens, I think Vitalik did a great job letting people understand the concept of non-transferability, the ability to put data into NFTs and whatnot. But there's also so many other implementations of that, right? And if you haven't read the paper, super interesting, so go and check that out. So we have tons of tools, you guys, right? So what's missing? So what if that previous diagram I'd show you started thinking about decentralized identifiers and using them? So instead of having that mess of wallets and that spaghetti, we can super simplify it, where I can just have one DID that has control over all my different wallets. That's a different way of thinking about account abstraction. And everybody talks about identity, okay? So then, my wallets then have all my NFTs, or my SBTs, of course. They have my passes, which are attestations, too. There's a lot of people out there also talking about attestations. I heard the Optimism guy talking about attestations and how that can become another way to identity. Now you need some form of store, right? You need to store information. Where is that going to be stored? Well, you can store it on decentralized services. You can use IPFS to pin it to some other storage solution. There's so many things we can do. And ultimately, of course, all your credentials get associated with this ultimate DID. All right, so now we have that. Let's go back to how do we onboard people. So what if we focus on use cases that don't rely on wallet transactions and entry points that are not money, right? I come to a wallet and then I see that big fat zero, remember that? How do we cut down the number of steps for users? And we've done a really nice job. Some people just hide the private keys and all of that, seed phrases. But how about we start using identity and biometrics to secure those keys? What if self-custody doesn't become front and center? We still want to enable self-custody, and I think it's amazing. But self-custody is really scary for most people. I think even for me, right? I have been doing this for a while, and I have still to worry, where's my ledger? I want to make sure that that's secure. Now I got a Saga phone. Okay, now I have a new place to store my hardware wallet, which is amazing, but okay, now I have to worry about that. Then I have seed phrases that are attached to my ledger and to my Saga phone and to my Phantom wallet. And I'm a, quite advanced person. How do we think that that's going to work with the next 100, 200 billion users that we want to onboard into Web3? So, why don't we start with some different type of use cases, like messaging, like entertainment, and of course, gaming, right? So I want to chat with my friends. I want to play a game, or I want to watch a movie. I want to watch a piece of content. All these things are already being thought and are being built by tons of different amazing projects, right? But still, there's always this onboarding into, you need a wallet, you need to do this. We need to forget about that and then take advantage of all these blockchain mechanics that we have and create amazing experiences. So pretty simple. You come in, you pick a username, or maybe not, and then you go. Why can't we do that, you guys? Is it that difficult to do that? The designers over there, wouldn't you love to do that? And if this is your first experience, you can now have a wallet, you now have an identity, all that is done for you, and it can be selectively disclosed later. Don't overwhelm the user for any of that. And by the way, you can also let the user use their existing wallet. There's a few million of us that already have wallets, that already get it. Let's not forget us. So, to recap, and I think I went a little fast, but I wanted to have some time for questions. We need to stop scaring people. We have to keep it simple. We need to focus on engaging experiences. We have to evolve the wallets to be primarily for signing messages and transactions and storing private keys. That's what a wallet should be for, right? It's a place for our private keys. Our private keys are what enable us to do what we want to do. And let's use identity and biometrics to secure those private keys. And now, questions. Anybody? Yes. I think they're going to get your microphone.
Thank you. So Becky, I came a bit late to this conference, so sorry if I'm asking a question that has already been processed. Do you know of the authentication, the open source protocol WebAuthn, or not?
Do I know of it? I know of it, yes.
Yeah. Is Civic using it?
No, we're not using it today. Civic is using, in order to build profiles, we're using the sole DID method that we created. And then as part of that, we create a DID document on chain where the data gets stored. We can do the same thing for the ETH method, for the poly method, and it's now new. But then the idea is that all that information gets stored on chain, and you link to IPFS records, you can link wallets, and you can do multiple things like that.
Gotcha. And about like cost efficiency, speed, etc. Any concerns there? Any shortcomings?
Well, it really depends on what you're trying to do. The thing about speed at the end of the day is what are you enabling and what is that use case? So at the time of creating the identity, it can be a little bit slower, right? Because at that point in time, you're not trying to complete the specific task that is going to require you to do it in like sub-second speeds. So once you have that, then your identity needs to be used to enable you to access a service or a smart contract. And that's where, for example, Civic issues what we call the Civic Pass, which is ultimately an attestation on chain that a specific type of verification has been issued. And that then makes the transaction basically be as fast as the chain. Because then the smart contract is only just looking at the wallet and for the presence of that specific token or NFT or whatnot. So it does not get in the way at all for the execution. That's a great question. Thank you. Yes, sir, over there.
Do you try to prevent one person with multiple DIDs?
So it's the question, how do we do it? Okay. So at Civic, in order to do uniqueness, we use biometrics in order to do that. That would mean that you would do a video selfie, from what we then create a 3D face map, and that's what then is associated with that wallet. And then if you come back and try to add another wallet to that same 3D face representation of yourself, we would not allow you to do that. You would need to revoke it, then wait a cooldown period, and then you can reissue that uniqueness to a separate wallet. If you do it to the DID, right, you would be able to then just transfer it over and enable a specific wallet. But this is where a lot needs to change, where instead of going to just a public key, you go to the DID, right? And you query the DID. If you are now talking to the DID, you can then look for whatever, then you can just say, okay, I'm coming in with this wallet that is associated with this DID. If you come back with a different wallet, it doesn't matter, because you're always going to be checking that DID in order to make sure that it's unique. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So you basically try to enforce one person, one DID.
Ultimately, yes. That's the... No. So you have one main DID, and then from that DID, you could create other DIDs that are associated with that parent DID.
But that's
Does that make sense?
that's easily verifiable.
Yeah, that can be verifiable on chain.
Okay.
Exactly.
On our protocol, we don't want anyone to use multiple accounts. So we try to prevent the wash trading. Right now, we don't have the best way to do that besides, verify with Twitter and let community people to report cheating. What's the better way?
We should chat. Love to
Sure,
explore how we can
talk
collaborate.
to you afterwards.
Yeah, 100%. Love it. I think there's one over here.
Great talk, by the way. A lot of good context. So I think in the Ethereum community, the last couple of years, we've had, did Ether, did 3ID, and a lot of the people working in this space kind of realized that there is a ceiling for onboarding millions of users using blockchains. I'm wondering if there's a world you see in where there's like did PKH and did Sol, or if you guys are betting solely on did Sol, or if you see some balance between those two.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I go back to my diagram, this guy. So the world that we see is a cross-chain world, right? That in some shape or form, the user doesn't need to worry about it. And behind the scenes, we will take care of that. So there is room for all those DIDs. And those DIDs are going to be native to where the application is being developed. So that, I think it's kind of like the way forward where all those DIDs are going to be interoperable too. That's why it's great that they're all based on a standard. And our goal at Civic is to enable that interoperability between the DIDs across chains.
Hi, my name is Felix from Blockchain at USC. Thank you so much for speaking today. I think what you're doing is super cool. I'm kind of interested, how exactly, when you create a new wallet, how do you make that connection from that new wallet to DID? Let's say I have a Coinbase wallet and a MetaMask wallet. How do you make that connection?
Yes. So there's two ways that you could do it. There are libraries that enable that account abstraction directly. We've built one, an open source one, on Solana. It's called Cryptid, right? We have our nonprofit arm, identity.com, that publishes lots of really cool open source libraries that you can check out. So that's one way. But the more general way is using the DID document and signing signing messages using the wallets that you want to link to the DID. So what you do is you start with one of the wallets. That wallet becomes your primary key management for your DID. And then once you create that DID, then there's a document that gets created on chain where you can then link all different wallets by asking the user to prove that they own that wallet by different methods. That is usually signing a message. So once they sign a message, then the DID method allows you to write that on the document, and that's all on chain, that then that user also owns that wallet.
Got you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, it's Dom from Vault ID. So we've been working on self-sovereign identity since 2018, and over last year, you're partnered with most major layer ones to also build on-chain identity. And so we've seen use cases in the public sector working with governments and banking financial services, increasingly also Web3. I'd be curious which the first use or the most important use cases you see at the moment for either self-sovereign identity or also, let's say, on-chain approaches with NFTs or SPTs. Do you see any burning hair problems or still mostly pilots?
So there's a lot. I think we're seeing that the EU is adopting self-sovereign identity concepts, digital identity. So I think that's going to be a huge driver for the rest of the world to start to follow. So that I think it's one. I think the other one, if we want to grow DeFi we're going to have to start using identity in some shape or form. If we want the real players outside of crypto to come in and join the fun, we're going to have to start playing by their rules in some shape or form. And then, of course, some governments like California, they just started issuing car titles as NFTs. So that pretty quickly is going to require to have some form of digital identity to own that NFT, right? And then you can then transfer it and whatnot. So I think those are the use cases that already starting to see out there. You're seeing that age verification is another interesting use case that starts gating specific type of content, right? Also enables gambling the right way. So I think there's a lot of use cases that this year, I think this is the year of identity. Based on everything that I'm hearing, everything that everybody's talking about, for some reason, everybody cares about identity this year. Any other questions? I think we have a few more moments, so.
Hi, Raul Dokame from Nebula. So I'm wondering if for the top level DID, if you're looking.
Can you get a little closer?
Farther away or closer?
Yeah.
Better? Okay, for top level DID, if you're looking at having that be a legal person, a corporation or something like that, and have the sub DIDs for, say, the employees, how that case.
Yeah. So a DID can represent any kind of entity, right? It's an identifier. It can be an IoT device. It can be an institution. It can be a person. It can be an animal. It can be a tree, for all that matters, right? So I think what you're trying to do is how do you prove that someone has a relationship with that other institution, right? So that's where all these concepts of verifiable credentials, of issuers, everything that comes with self-sovereign identity comes to play, where that institution would be the verifier and ultimately issue attestations that this other entity is related to them. We can talk a little bit about that. We did a proof of concept about that a few years ago that I can share some of the learnings about that. All right. Any other questions, you guys? Oh my God.
So I have a question about how you store the facial recognition on chain, because I know a lot of people are worried about that.
So we are not storing any of that information on chain. And thank you. That's a great question. I think I should mention, never, ever, ever store any kind of PII information on chain. Don't do that. If you think that, and some teacher told you that encryption is the best thing in the world and this and that, and you can store it wherever you want, don't do it. Please, we ask you, I beg you not to store any kind of PII on chain. So what we do for the facial map, the 3D map, is that's stored on a traditional Web2 type of database that also we have full control of, nobody else. It's not, all that software is on-premise, on our servers, so everything can be deleted whenever we want. That enables us to also be GDPR compliant. And that's one of the big problems with storage today, and decentralized storage to be more specific, right? How do you enable deleting the data when the user wants it to? That's a big requirement for GDPR, and that's kind of tricky. Thank you, Kurt. What's that? Well, it's a 3D face map. That 3D face map has all different data points. So it's kind of like a hash, but more than the hash, because it has a 3D map representation of your face that then every time that you authenticate, we recreate it, and then we compare it to the one that we have on the database. So that enables uniqueness and also re-authentication. So that you can also make sure that that person that whitelisted or got that token on that wallet is that same person the next time that you see them. Because otherwise they can just sell those private keys to somebody else, right? And you also want to enable that verification. We good? All right. Well, you guys check out Civic, civic.com. Go to civic.me, create your own profile. Our documents are also ready, docs.civic.com. Everything is online. Would love to get your thoughts. So thank you so much.